The Vanguard's arrival changed everything. Their massive ships appeared silently above Earth's major cities on a quiet Sunday morning, their crystalline hulls refracting sunlight in prismatic displays that dazzled millions of upturned faces. Admiral Kira Patel stood on the bridge of the UES Sentinel, watching the main display as the alien vessels took up precise positions in geosynchronous orbit. "They're being awfully particular about their positioning," she muttered, more to herself than to her crew. 20 years of naval service had taught her to trust her instincts, and something about this formation made her skin crawl. The Vanguard had come bearing gifts, clean energy technology, advanced medical knowledge, and promises of peaceful cultural exchange. Their ambassador, a tall, ethereal being who called himself First Speaker Luminant, had charmed the world's leaders with eloquent speeches about galactic brotherhood and shared prosperity. But Admiral Patel noticed the little things. The way the Vanguard's ships always maintained exact firing positions over Earth's major population centers. How their cultural attaches seemed unusually interested in Earth's military installations. The subtle condescension in First Speaker Luminant's voice when discussing humanity's quaint technological achievements. "Lieutenant Rashid," she called out to her communications officer, "pull up the signal analysis from the last 3 weeks of Vanguard transmissions." "Yes, Admiral," Rashid responded, his fingers dancing across his console. "But their communications are encrypted with their own protocols. We can't." "I don't need to read their mail," Patel interrupted. "I want to see the pattern. When they send, where they send, how much they send." The data appeared on her screen, and Patel's heart sank. The transmission bursts followed a clear military protocol, disguised as diplomatic chatter. She'd seen similar patterns during the Pan-Asian conflict of 2045, the telltale signs of forces coordinating for a surprise attack. In her private quarters that evening, Patel placed a secure call to General Marcus Thompson at the United Earth Defense Council. "They're mapping our weaknesses, Marcus. Every diplomatic meeting, every cultural exchange, they're assessing our capabilities and finding our vulnerabilities." Thompson's weathered face showed no surprise. "We suspected as much. The question is, why? They're centuries ahead of us technologically. If they wanted to conquer Earth, why this elaborate charade? Because they don't just want our planet," Patel realized, the pieces clicking into place. "They want to make an example of us. Show the galaxy what happens to primitive species who don't know their place." "What's your evidence?" Patel sent him her analysis. "Their ships are weaponized, Marcus. Those beautiful crystal hulls. They're focusing arrays for some kind of energy weapon. The cultural exchange centers they're building? Perfect locations for ground-based command posts. They're not preparing for peaceful coexistence, they're preparing for occupation. The Council won't act without proof," Thompson warned. "We can't risk antagonizing them if we're wrong." "Then we get proof," Patel said firmly. "And we prepare." Quietly. Over the next month, Patel worked with a small team of trusted officers, analyzing every interaction with the Vanguard. Lieutenant Rashid discovered that their medical scanning technology was mapping human biological weaknesses. Engineer Jessica O'Malley found that the clean energy systems they'd gifted were designed to integrate with Earth's power grid, and could probably shut it down with a single command. The final proof came during a diplomatic reception aboard the Vanguard's flagship. Patel noticed First Speaker Luminant speaking with his subordinates in what they thought was a private moment. Her universal translator picked up fragments: primitive species, suitable lesson, cleansing. That night, Patel called an emergency session of the Defense Council. The evidence was overwhelming. The Vanguard weren't peaceful visitors, they were advanced scouts for an invasion force, preparing to subjugate humanity in the most humiliating way possible. But as the Council digested this bitter truth, something unexpected happened. Instead of panic, Patel saw determination settle over the faces of Earth's military leaders. Humanity had spent its entire history fighting, evolving, and surviving against overwhelming odds. If the vanguard thought they would find easy prey, they were about to learn a harsh lesson. They think we're primitive, Patel addressed the council. They expect us to either submit quietly or fight conventionally and lose spectacularly. But humanity has a long history of surviving by being unpredictable, by turning weakness into strength. The vanguard's arrogance will be their downfall. The council unanimously approved Patel's proposal. As she left the chamber, she allowed herself a grim smile. The vanguard thought they were watching humanity's final days as a free species. Instead, they were about to witness the moment humanity showed the universe exactly what happened when you pushed them too far. In her office, Patel began drafting Operation Trojan Horse. The vanguard had no idea that their primitive hosts were already dismantling their gifts, learning their weaknesses, and preparing a response that would shake the foundations of galactic society. They were about to learn why humanity's history of constant warfare and adaptation made them the most dangerous species in the known universe, especially when backed into a corner. Dr. James Rodriguez hadn't slept in 3 days, but he barely noticed. The holographic displays surrounding him in the underground facility nicknamed the Hive painted his face in an ethereal blue glow as he examined the latest test results. Behind him, a captured piece of Vanguard technology pulsed with an inner light, its crystalline structure seemingly mocking their efforts to understand it. "You should rest, James," said Colonel Nadia Volkov, the facility's security chief. Her cybernetic eye whirred quietly as it adjusted to the dim lighting. "You're no good to Earth if you burn out." "Can't rest," he muttered, manipulating the holographic data with practiced gestures. "Not when I'm this close. Their technology, it's not as advanced as we thought. It's just different. They took a different path than we did." The Vanguard's gifts had been distributed to secret research facilities worldwide. While the aliens believed Earth's scientists were merely studying their superior technology in awe, humanity's brightest minds were instead reverse engineering it, finding weaknesses, and developing countermeasures. "Look at this," Rodriguez pointed to a complex energy pattern. "Their ship's crystalline structure isn't just for show. It's a massive focusing array for their weapons and defensive systems. But it has a fundamental flaw: it's too perfect." Volkov raised an eyebrow. "Too perfect?" "Their crystals are grown in zero gravity, creating absolutely flawless structures. But that perfection makes them brittle in specific ways. Hit them with the right frequency of our quantum resonance technology." He typed a command, and a simulation played out. A human-designed weapon fired a seemingly modest energy pulse at a Vanguard shield. The perfect crystalline structure amplified the pulse instead of dispersing it, creating a cascade failure that shattered the entire array. "Like an opera singer breaking a wine glass," Volkov said, understanding dawning in her organic and synthetic eyes. "But scaled up to ship-sized proportions." "Exactly. And that's just the beginning." Across the planet, other breakthroughs were happening. In Johannesburg, Dr. Imani Okoro had discovered how to disrupt the Vanguard's quantum communications. In Beijing, Professor Li Wei had developed a way to turn their own sensor systems against them. Each discovery was carefully hidden behind a facade of primitive struggle with basic alien concepts. Admiral Patel's Operation Trojan Horse was proceeding exactly as planned. Every time the Vanguard sensors swept Earth's facilities, they saw exactly what they expected: a primitive species fumbling with technology beyond their understanding. The truth was hidden in facilities like the Hive, buried deep beneath the surface or hidden in plain sight. Rodriguez's quantum resonance weapon was only part of humanity's response. The real genius was in how they planned to use it. The Vanguard expected humans to think like them, to approach warfare with the same tactical doctrines they'd used to dominate their sector of space. They didn't understand that humanity's greatest strength was its diversity of thought, its ability to approach problems from angles that no other species would consider. "We're ready for the full-scale test," Rodriguez announced one morning, after a breakthrough that had kept him awake for yet another day. In a secure chamber deep within the hive, a full-sized prototype of the quantum resonance weapon waited. It looked deceptively simple, almost crude by Vanguard standards. That was intentional. The test target was a section of Vanguard hull crystal, obtained through careful subterfuge. As the weapon powered up, its unrefined appearance belied the sophistication of its internal workings. The pulse it fired seemed almost anticlimactic, until the crystal target shattered into dust. "Send the data to Admiral Patel," Rodriguez ordered, allowing himself a small smile. "Tell her Project Glass Hammer is ready." But even as humanity prepared its defenses, the Vanguard were moving forward with their own plans. First Speaker Luminant had announced a special ceremony to formally welcome Earth into the galactic community. It was scheduled to take place in just 3 days. "They're making their move soon," Volkov said, reviewing the intelligence reports. "That ceremony is probably when they'll strike." Rodriguez nodded, already thinking about final adjustments to the weapons systems. "Let them come. They think they're springing a trap on us. They don't realize we've spent months building a bigger trap around them." In orbit, the Vanguard ships continued their silent watch, their crystal hulls gleaming in the sunlight. Their sensors showed exactly what they expected, a planet of primitives, barely able to grasp the basics of their superior technology. They had no way of detecting the quantum resonance weapons being quietly positioned around the globe, or the other surprises humanity had prepared. The countdown to the ceremony continued. 3 days until the Vanguard would make their move. 3 days until they learned that humanity's apparent technological gap was the greatest deception in Earth's history. 3 days until the galaxy learned what happened when someone pushed humanity too far. As Rodriguez finally allowed himself to rest, he thought about the irony of it all. The Vanguard had come to Earth expecting to find easy prey, a primitive species they could dominate to prove their superiority. Instead, they had awakened humanity's most powerful instincts, the drive to survive, to adapt, and to overcome any challenge. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth's history of constant conflict had created a species that was impossible to subjugate. Commander Wei Zhang stood at the hidden command center beneath Shanghai, watching the holographic display as the Vanguard ships moved into position for their ceremonial formation. His scarred hands, remnants of his days as a fighter pilot, gripped the tactical console tightly. Years of military experience told him the aliens' formation was anything but ceremonial, it was a textbook attack pattern. "All stations, status report," he commanded, his voice steady despite the tension crackling through the air. "Glass hammer arrays in position and charged," reported Lieutenant Olivia Santos from Weapons Control. "Quantum disruption grid at full power, masked by atmospheric interference." "Ground team standing by," added Major Ibrahim Hassan. "Stealth platforms ready to launch on your command." The Vanguard had chosen the United Nations headquarters in New York for their grand ceremony. First Speaker Luminant stood before the General Assembly, his crystalline form radiating an otherworldly grace as he prepared to deliver his address. The alien's voice carried through the chamber with practiced warmth. "Esteemed representatives of Earth, today marks your species' greatest moment, your acceptance into the greater galactic community." Zhang watched the transmission, noting the subtle shifts in the Vanguard ships' positions. They were tightening their formation, charging weapons while thinking their energy signatures were invisible to Earth's primitive sensors. "Admiral Patel," he spoke into his secure channel. "They're making their move." "Confirmed," came Patel's reply from the UES Sentinel. "All commanders, execute Operation Trojan Horse. Remember, let them throw the first punch." Luminant's speech reached its crescendo. "And now, witness the power of true civilization." The warmth in his voice vanished, replaced by cold contempt. The massive viewscreens behind him suddenly displayed the Vanguard fleet, their crystalline hulls beginning to pulse with deadly energy. But before the aliens could fire, something unexpected happened. Their quantum communications network, the system they used to coordinate their attack, went dark. Dr. Okoro's disruption system had worked perfectly. "What is this?" Luminant demanded, his composure cracking for the first time. The chamber's lights flickered as the Vanguard tried to activate their planted power grid controls, only to find them unresponsive. "This," Admiral Patel's voice rang through the chamber as she stepped forward, "is humanity showing you our true face." Zhang gave the command. Across the globe, hidden bunkers opened. What appeared to be crude satellite dishes arose from camouflaged positions, Dr. Rodriguez's quantum resonance weapons, each one precisely targeted at a Vanguard vessel. "All units," Zhang ordered, "execute pattern Omega." The resonance weapons fired. To the Vanguard sensors, the energy signatures appeared negligible, barely worth raising shields for. That was their final mistake. The pulses struck their crystalline hulls, and the perfect structures began to vibrate at their resonant frequency. Luminant's eyes widened in horror as reports flooded in. Ship after ship reported critical failures as their crystal hulls shattered, their supposedly impenetrable defenses turned to glittering dust in space. "Impossible," the first speaker breathed. "You're primitives. You barely understood our basic technology." "No," Patel corrected him. "We understood it well enough to know exactly how to break it. We've spent months studying your weaknesses while showing you what you expected to see, a primitive species in awe of your superiority." Zhang watched with grim satisfaction as the Vanguard fleet fell into chaos. Their perfect formation broke apart as ships tried to retreat, only to find themselves caught in Professor Li's modified sensor webs. Their own scanning systems turned against them to create a maze of false readings and phantom targets. "Launch stealth platforms," Zhang commanded. The platforms, humanity's true technological achievement, hidden from the Vanguard scans, rose from their concealed positions. They were ugly, asymmetrical things, a stark contrast to the Vanguard's crystal perfection. But they were brutally effective, their quantum disruption beams slicing through the aliens' failing defenses. In New York, Luminant made a desperate grab for what he thought was a concealed weapon. Before he could reach it, Colonel Volkov's cybernetically enhanced reflexes put him on the ground, her organic eye glinting with satisfaction. "A primitive just outsmarted you," she said coldly. "How's that for cultural exchange?" The battle in orbit turned into a rout. The Vanguard's remaining ships, their sophisticated systems crippled by humanity's carefully planned countermeasures, were forced to surrender or flee. Those that tried to escape found their hyperspace drives wouldn't engage, another gift from humanity's scientists, who had spent months preparing this trap. Zhang allowed himself a small smile as he watched the Vanguard's grand invasion fall apart. Status report. 80% of enemy fleet neutralized, Santos reported. The rest are surrendering. No significant damage to Earth's defense grid. Operation Trojan Horse is a success. In the UN chamber, Admiral Patel stood before the assembled representatives of Earth, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's triumph. "For centuries, we were divided, fighting amongst ourselves. The Vanguard thought that made us weak. Instead, it made us strong. We learned to adapt, to improvise, to find ways to defeat superior forces. Every war, every conflict, taught us something. And today, we use those lessons to defend our world." She turned to the captured first speaker. "You came here expecting to find an easy target. Instead, you found humanity. Remember this day. Remember what happened when you pushed us too far. And make sure the rest of the galaxy remembers too." Captain Folami Adebayo stood in the assault shuttle's bay, addressing the elite squad of troops before her. Through the viewports, the massive bulk of the Vanguard flagship, Eternal Radiance, loomed against the star-filled backdrop, its crystalline surface now scarred and dulled by the quantum resonance attacks. "The Vanguard thought they were the hunters," she said, her voice carrying the strength of her Nigerian Special Forces training. Now they're about to learn what it means to be the prey. Our mission is simple: secure their command center and their database cores. Everything they know about the galaxy becomes ours. The troops before her weren't wearing the sleek-powered armor the Vanguard had expected humanity to covet. Instead, they wore practical, battle-tested suits that looked almost crude but incorporated decades of hard-learned combat lessons. Every piece of equipment they carried had been chosen not for its technological advancement, but for its reliability and effectiveness. "Breach Team Alpha, ready," reported Sergeant Takeshi Tanaka, his demolitions gear looking distinctly low-tech compared to the alien vessel they were about to board. That was intentional. The Vanguard's internal defenses were calibrated to stop high-energy weapons and sophisticated breaching tools. They weren't prepared for the simple brutality of shaped charges and thermite. "Remember," Adebayo continued, "they still think we're primitives who got lucky. Let's show them that luck had nothing to do with it. Execute breach pattern Delta." The assault shuttles, their hulls deliberately designed to look patched together and improvised, approached the flagship from multiple vectors. The Vanguard's remaining defensive systems, struggling to recover from the quantum disruption, barely registered the seemingly primitive craft as threats. That changed when Tanaka's charges detonated. The shaped explosions weren't elegant or sophisticated, they were simply incredibly effective, punching clean holes through the weakened crystal hull. Before the Vanguard could respond, Adebayo's teams were inside, moving with the coordinated precision that came from centuries of human military evolution. "Contact," called out Corporal Maria Rossi as the first Vanguard security team appeared. The aliens' weapons were technically superior in every way, and completely useless when a simple flashbang grenade overwhelmed their sensitive optical systems. Adebayo led her team deeper into the ship, their progress marked by the efficient elimination of resistance. The Vanguard's internal defenses, designed to stop energy weapons and advanced tech, proved surprisingly vulnerable to ballistic weapons and explosive compounds that humanity had spent centuries perfecting. "They never thought we'd actually board them," Adebayo remarked as they reached another security checkpoint. "They were so convinced of their superiority that they never considered we'd dare to fight them hand to hand." The ship's command center was their primary objective. Inside, the remaining Vanguard officers were frantically trying to understand how their perfect plan had fallen apart. Their sensors, designed to detect energy weapons and power signatures, failed to warn them of Adebayo's approach until her team had already breached the doors. "In the name of humanity," she announced to the stunned alien officers, "this ship is now under Earth's control." The Vanguard commander, his crystalline form dulled with stress, looked at her with incomprehension. "How?" he demanded. "Your species barely understood our basic technology. Our tactical simulations showed." "Your simulations showed what we wanted them to show," Adebayo interrupted. "You saw a species divided by internal conflicts and technological gaps. You never realized those conflicts taught us to fight in ways you couldn't predict." As her teams secured the command center, Dr. Rodriguez's voice came through her calm, "Captain, we're ready to begin data extraction." The quantum resonance attack weakened their encryption just as we predicted. The Vanguard commander watched in horror as humanity's primitive computer systems began downloading centuries of accumulated alien knowledge. What they saw made Adebayo's blood run cold. Earth hadn't been the first world the Vanguard had targeted. They had a long history of finding primitive species and subjugating them, using their technological superiority to force submission. "Send this to Admiral Patel immediately," she ordered. "The galaxy needs to know what they've been doing." As her teams worked, Adebayo received reports from other assault teams worldwide. Every major Vanguard installation on Earth was being secured. Their technology, their knowledge, their carefully maintained facade of benevolent superiority, all of it was falling into human hands. "Why?" the Vanguard commander finally asked. "Why maintain the deception? Why not simply fight us openly?" Adebayo smiled grimly. "Because we learned long ago that the strongest position isn't the one where you show your power, it's the one where your enemy underestimates you until it's too late. You thought our history of warfare made us primitive. Instead, it made us the perfect predators. We just waited for you to walk into our trap. The data extraction continued, revealing more of the Vanguard's secrets with each passing moment. Their technology, while advanced, wasn't the incomprehensible marvel they'd pretended it was. They had simply taken different developmental paths, focusing on elegance and efficiency while humanity's tech had been forged in the crucible of constant conflict and adaptation. Flagship secure, Adebayo reported to Admiral Patel. You're not going to believe what we're finding in their databases. The Vanguard, they're not the power they pretended to be. They're just bullies who found a strategy that worked on less adaptable species. And now that strategy has failed them completely, Patel responded. Well done, Captain. The tide has turned. Now it's time to show the galaxy that humanity isn't just another primitive species to be conquered. We're the ones who end this cycle of subjugation. Ambassador Diana Blackwood stood before the Galactic Assembly, her presence a stark reminder of how much had changed in the 6 months since humanity's victory over the Vanguard. The crystalline chamber, once dominated by the Vanguard's overwhelming presence, now held representatives from dozens of species, many recently freed from Vanguard control. The era of subjugation is over, she declared, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Humanity stands ready to help forge a new galactic order, one built on mutual respect and genuine cooperation, not false superiority and hidden oppression. In orbit above the assembly world, the UES Defender hung like a promise, or a warning. Unlike the elegant Vanguard ships, the human vessel embraced its utilitarian design. Its hull bore the marks of recent battles, each scar a testament to humanity's rise from intended victim to galactic protector. The Vanguard's databases revealed a disturbing truth, Blackwood continued. For centuries, they sought out species they deemed primitive, species whose technological development took different paths from their own. They offered these civilizations false friendship, only to subjugate them once their defenses were compromised. The assembly chamber erupted in murmurs as Blackwood activated a holographic display. It showed world after world where the Vanguard had enacted their strategy of false benevolence followed by brutal domination. But now, those worlds were free. Admiral Patel, standing at the back of the chamber, allowed herself a small smile. The liberation campaign had been swift and decisive. Once humanity understood the Vanguard's technology, their entire empire had crumbled. Dr. Rodriguez's quantum resonance weapons had proven devastatingly effective against every Vanguard installation, while Colonel Volkov's tactical innovations had transformed the way space warfare was conducted. But we're not here for revenge, Blackwood emphasized. Humanity knows all too well the cost of conflict. Our history, which the Vanguard saw as primitive, taught us not just how to fight, but why to fight. We fight to protect, to liberate, to ensure that no species ever again faces what we faced. In the months since the Vanguard's defeat, humanity had shared their defensive technologies with former subjugated worlds. Not the advanced weapons, those remained carefully guarded, but the means to detect and counter the kind of deception the Vanguard had employed. Never again would a civilization fall prey to false promises of superior beings. Commander Zhang's voice came through Patel's secure comm. The last Vanguard holdout has surrendered. Their entire defense network is down. Patel nodded slightly. The Vanguard's fall was complete. But humanity had been careful not to repeat their mistakes. There would be no subjugation, no forced technological regression. Instead, the former Vanguard worlds would be helped to rebuild, to find their own path forward. We propose a new framework for galactic cooperation, Blackwood announced. The Stellar Defense Accord. Under this agreement, every civilization maintains its autonomy while contributing to mutual defense. No more hierarchies of advanced and primitive. No more technological suppression disguised as guidance. The assembly chamber's atmosphere had changed. Where once fear and submission had ruled, now hope and determination filled the air. Species that had been deliberately kept apart by the vanguard were forming new alliances, sharing their unique perspectives and technological approaches. Captain Adebayo, now Fleet Commander Adebayo, watched from her position near the chamber's entrance. The Vanguard's former flagship, renamed New Dawn, had been transformed into a mobile research center where scientists from dozens of species worked together, combining their different approaches to technology and science. The galaxy faces many challenges, Blackwood continued. Threats that no single species can face alone. But together, combining our different paths of development, our varied approaches to problems, we can build something unprecedented, a truly united galactic community. Dr. Rodriguez, who had recently established the multi-species technical exchange, stood among a group of alien scientists. Their current project involved combining human quantum resonance technology with biological computing methods from the Centauri worlds and energy manipulation techniques from the Proxima colonies. The results were promising beyond anything any single species could have achieved alone. Humanity doesn't seek to rule, Blackwood declared. We seek to protect. To ensure that what happened to us, what happened to so many worlds, never happens again. The Vanguard's greatest mistake wasn't attacking Earth. It was believing that different meant primitive, that their path was the only path to advancement. As she concluded her speech, the assembly erupted in approval. The vote that followed was unanimous. The Stellar Defense Accord would become the foundation of a new galactic order. Later, in a private chamber, Patel met with Blackwood. Think they understood the real message? The Admiral asked. Blackwood nodded. That humanity will not tolerate another vanguard. That we'll fight not just for ourselves, but for any species facing subjugation. That diversity of development isn't weakness, it's the galaxy's greatest strength. And that pushing humanity too far was the biggest mistake the Vanguard ever made, Patel added. A lesson the galaxy won't soon forget. As they looked out at the stars, both women knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had emerged from its trial by fire not as conquerors, but as guardians. The universe had learned what happened when humanity was pushed too far, and in learning that lesson, had found not a new tyrant, but a fierce protector of freedom and diversity throughout the stars.